Welcome to Caregivers and Candid Conversation podcast. I am Lashina McBride, the host and the executive director of We Support Caregivers Incorporated. We Support Caregivers is a 501c3 organization whose mission is to encourage and empower individuals who care for their elderly loved ones to cultivate and focus on self-care. To make a donation or to learn more about us, please visit WeSupportCaregivers.org. And caregivers, while you're on our website, be sure to check out everything that we've made available to you. From our Care Connection emails that you can subscribe to, from our self-care support text that you can join, from our self-care support kits that you can sign up to possibly receive one, the birthday club, our free educational resources, and more. Again, visit WeSupportCaregivers.org and check all these resources that are available to you, the caregiver. Caregivers, you are very important people, and we want to celebrate you on your birthday. Join We Support Caregivers Birthday Club. The Birthday Club was created to celebrate caregivers who typically do not make the time to celebrate themselves. Each month, a caregiver is selected and is given a social media shout out, a birthday card, and a movie ticket to celebrate their special day. Join for free by visiting WeSupportCaregivers.org. And remember, you are very important people and you should be celebrated. We Support Caregivers Incorporated because caregivers deserve self-care. Welcome to another Caregivers and Candid Conversation. I have the pleasure of being with Miss Nakia Tolbert today. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but Nakia and I, we go way back, years back. And it's a pleasure for her to come on this podcast. So Nakia, please introduce yourself and tell a little about you, your businesses, organization, that stuff.
Hey, Lashina, and hello to everyone out there who's listening to this podcast. Thank you for having me, Lashina.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited to be here sharing space with you.
Yes.
My name's Nakia Tolbert. As Lashina mentioned, I am a mental health strategist. I am the founder and executive director of an organization which we call Hearts Full of Grace.
Yes.
Founded the organization in 2009.
Yes.
Became a certified nonprofit in 2015. And our objective is to support families and to ensure that they are making mental health a priority.
Yes. And I think that's how we connected because, we support caregivers. Our whole mission is about just, encouraging and empowering the, caregivers to, make their self-care a priority. So I think that's how we connected with that. Right. But we've known each other way before that.
Yes.
So way back in the day. But I appreciate you being here and everything.
You.
So this particular podcast is called Caregiving and Mental Health. It's, navigating caregiving while managing your mental health. So where I want to start off at is, I know you have some experience with caregiving and everything. What can you tell caregivers listening? Because I think sometimes, you're a caregiver, you're busy and things like that. I think we definitely have the tendency of neglecting ourselves. And of course, as you know, mental health is very important. What can you tell the burnt out, stressed out caregiver about mental health? Maybe some tips for them, to manage their mental health, not to ignore themselves. I'm going to let you have the floor, but that's what we're talking about. Caregiving and mental health. I believe caregiving weighs on your mental health, and there need to be some type of outlet or tools or something that caregivers can utilize and implement every day to make sure they keep that mental health a priority. So go ahead, Nakia.
Okay, you just nailed it.
Stop it.
But I will add
Go ahead.
I'll be happy to add to. Okay, when we are caring for someone.
Let me stop. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Give the whole definition of mental health, mental wellness, all that.
Absolutely. Okay. So our mental health encompasses our psychological, our emotional, our cognitive well-being.
Okay.
So those are three different areas.
Okay.
But if you were to break it down, oftentimes you'll see a dimension. If you look, I'm a visual learner. So if you take into consideration all the aspects of our lives,
Okay.
it's how well we do in each of those areas.
Okay.
So we're talking physical, we're talking emotional, we're talking social, we're talking financial, we're talking what did I leave off? Physical, social, emotional. Some dimensions show environmental, right? Thank you. See, I told you nailed it. So some dimensions will show you 7, some will show you 8,
Spiritual.
some will show you 6, right?
Okay.
And so it's how well each of those areas interact.
Okay.
That's one great way to kind of bring it home to someone who needs to visualize what that is. And oftentimes we absolutely take for granted that mental health is not as valuable as it actually is, because each element of our life is so interdependent upon the other. And so we're not doing well in one, we're not doing well in the other. And then that all weighs on our overall mental health. So all of those pieces comprise our mental health.
Okay.
And so for a caregiver who puts themselves in the unique position of taking care of someone who they love, which is already challenging, depending on the capacity in which you're having to care for them, depending on the circumstances that have led them to require a caregiver, you're already in a position of stress.
Yes.
And so in order to be effective at what you do, you have to create a routine. And so what I like about routine as it differs from schedule, I like scheduling the time also, but I like more developing a routine that says maybe it won't be at 8 in the morning, because I may sleep in today, but at least it'll be the first thing in the morning.
Okay, I like that.
So absolutely,
I like that. I'm gonna sit there for a moment.
Yeah,
I like how you said this, not a schedule or a routine.
Right.
And you made me think about some things just in my own life right now. I need to make it more of a routine than a schedule. I'm so used to that to-do list, this, that, whatever. Just as long as it's one of the first things. And I'm learning that, because sometimes I beat myself up. Girl, you didn't get that done today.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? I'm like, but it helps me sometimes to have that to-do list. Like, okay, I feel so accomplished when I get all that stuff done.
Absolutely.
That I say. And when I'm like, girl, you did all those 7 things and you didn't make time for that. That's okay.
Right.
But I like the concept or the idea of the routine, as long as it get done in that day, or long as I get first. I like how you put that. Right. So yes, that really struck out to me, and I just wanted to elaborate on that. But that's really good. So caregivers, don't get bent on a schedule. Make your mental health priority more so a routine.
Absolutely. And that's the key. Like it's the prioritization.
Okay.
And that's what routine really has become for me as a mental health strategist. So it's not the schedule, because the schedule is going to change. I'm also a mother of 4. In addition to the nonprofit, I lead a homeschool co-op.
Right.
I do some fee-based services for the organization. So things are going to have to adjust at sometimes, but I have to still ensure that no matter what I have planned to do, I know that I made a decision to get up 15 minutes earlier.
Okay.
Just so that I can have that time all to myself. But if I have an opportunity to sleep until 10 as opposed to 9, I'm doing it. Okay. That's a part of prioritizing. Right. But it is something that I've made a priority. So when I get up early, whatever time it is, I know that time to myself is the first thing that I am dedicating myself to doing.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're good. No, if I cut you off, you can continue. So I get it. So it's making it a priority in a routine. So that's the first thing they have to realize that. But let me ask, let's put it into some realistic perspectives. Let's
do it.
Okay, you're the caregiver, you've been burnt out, you've been up all night with the loved one that got dementia. What should someone do knowing that they still got to make time for their mental health and things like that? Even though they're making it a routine, but what if they don't want to do it that day? Like, what if they don't want to give time for mindful activities or like that type of stuff? Even though doing that is going to help them feel better, help them navigate the day. What if they don't want to do that? They just feel grumpy. What should they do? Still not to neglect their mental health and making sure they're mentally well and everything, what should they still do if that's just the day from the night before, still being up, hardly getting any sleep? What should they do to still implement some mental self-care, some mental wellness?
Yes, that's a great question. So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
Even before we prioritize our routine, let's take the time to do like an inventory.
Okay.
Do an inventory and create a list of all the things that bring you joy, that make you feel good, that make you happy. And on a day where maybe you're not as motivated to do one thing over the other, still take the time to pull something from that list and ensure that you're doing. Research has shown that at least 1 hour a day.
1 hour a day.
It's great if you can get that 1 hour in at one time, but even if you break it up into increments, at least 1 hour a day, focusing on something that makes us feel well and makes us feel good on the inside is promoting our overall well-being and is enhancing our mental health and is a necessary part of us ensuring that we are preserving our mental health.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why do you think people underestimate the importance of our mental health? And we can talk about, a lot of people put emphasis on our physical health. Don't get it confused or twisted. That's important.
Right.
Of course, we know our spiritual health.
Right.
Our emotional health. Why do you think, people tend to take for granted or neglect the mental part? I don't know what that is. It's still a taboo subject, especially in our African American communities. Why? Why do we feel like we don't have to deal with it, or it's not an issue? Where did that come from?
So I think historically, especially as people of color, I think historically we have accepted the notion that we have to just work hard. That working hard without resting, we have to constantly grind. And sometimes we're not understanding that all those areas that you mentioned play a part of our mental health.
Correct.
So you're focusing on physical, but you're neglecting another part. It's something that it hasn't been a value in this country. Sometimes if you look on a lot of the areas that have the leading research and the leading strategies regarding mental health, you find them in other countries. Like United Kingdom is at the top of mental health research, mental health prioritization, or its communities is something that they're doing in schools. So it hasn't been a value overall historically in the United States. And it definitely hasn't been for people of color, because we grow up generally believing that you have to work so hard, and sometimes we really do. So you look at our percentages and you see in terms of households that we have more single parent households. So if I'm a single mom, I have to work hard. I'm taking care of everyone around me. And so I'm not prioritizing my mental health because I don't feel like I have time. Sometimes I don't even understand what mental health really is and what it comprises. And the fact that if I'm going to church every Sunday and I'm in Bible study, if I am on a bowling league, that all of that kind of comes together and is a part of my mental health. So if I can ensure that I'm looking at each of those areas of my life and giving a little bit to each of those, that I'm really promoting my well-being and my overall, mental well-being.
Okay. So let's talk about mental health issues. Let's say somebody is going through something. What's the difference of just somebody having some mental challenges, but they don't have an actual mental condition? You understand the mental conditions that, people do have, and what brings forth those mental conditions? We getting into it, but go ahead.
Okay, so let's get into it. So a mental challenge, any day, anyone can experience a mental health challenge.
Okay.
Stress is absolutely normal. Certain levels of stress are absolutely healthy. So stress in itself is not a mental health condition or illness. It can be a challenge if we're overly stressed. But if we have one day where we're stressed about a test we have to take,
Mm-hmm.
or we have a meeting with our supervisor and don't feel like we're going to do so well on our evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal stress. And our bodies are equipped to handle certain amounts of stress.
Yes.
Our bodies are wired to handle certain amounts. But when we get to a point
overload.
that it's an overload, our bodies are overwhelmed. We cannot handle that. And that's when it's the potential that stress becomes toxic.
Yes.
And if it's toxic stress, anxiety, depression, those things can begin to occur if we're not managing it. So that's another reason to take inventory. Like, not just inventory for the things that we enjoy doing, but taking inventory of the things that upset us, the things they call it triggers. People feel like it's a cliche statement, but it really is a trigger. The things that remind us of traumas that have occurred in our lives, but we have not taken the time to resolve them through therapy, through having support groups, just having the conversations. So when it gets to the point that it overwhelms our body, that's when it can begin to look like a mental illness, which can be something like depression, which can be compulsive anxiety, which can be other things. Now, the body doesn't just have to be overwhelmed for it to be a mental illness. Hereditary, epigenetics, epigenetics also can play into how we are impacted by some mental illnesses. There are just some things that naturally we are predisposed to. Just like with a physical, ailment, it's the same thing for mental illness in some cases.
So you mentioned that word. What is it called again?
Epigenetics.
Yeah, explain that.
So epigenetics is, if you go to the church, it might be what you call oh my goodness, a soul tie. So the only difference is you're born with it. So it is the trauma, it is the mental illness that has been passed on to us by our parents. Naturally, unhealed, unresolved trauma that we're then born with, and then we carry. And oftentimes, like, listen, we're just starting to talk about trauma. Like, trauma is not a discussion that we've always been having.
Correct.
In our households, in our families, in our places of worship.
That's right.
So we're still now just studying it. It's still evolving as a study. And so we're still learning and realizing the real connection to what happens, in heredity and in genetics that predisposes us. We don't even have anything to do with it. We're born into this experience that we now have to deal with. And so it's not resolved. Oftentimes our parents didn't resolve their trauma.
Right.
And so it's passed on to us, and then we don't resolve that trauma. So churchy talk, generational curse is there until it's broken.
Wow. That's some heavy stuff, but it's real.
It is real.
Like you said, because now jobs and everything is making leave for mental health days. So it's more so now prevalent. Do you believe? Because I never even heard of mental health days in corporate until COVID. Until COVID.
Right.
And now after the fact, COVID is still existent. Trust me, it's still here.
It is.
But, post after the, pandemic, it's now so mental health days. And there's nothing that FAs and supervisors can do. They have to allow it. Because you don't want somebody to come in with the gun. You want somebody to come in and bomb.
Absolutely.
You say one thing to them the wrong way, or not even the wrong way, just what you would commonly tell them they have to do for work, and it sets them off. Like, I feel like it's now we gotta be so super sensitive, regarding people, how they feel and stuff like that. Because now we're making mental health the thing to be concerned about.
Right.
But it's really been the thing to be concerned about.
Always. Yeah.
So it took, COVID really to heighten it.
Right.
So what would you say? Because some people are still, had struggling getting back into society, not being locked down, shut down, social distancing and stuff like that. So what would you say someone who's just now starting to make mental health awareness or their mental health a priority? Where's a good place? I know you said the routine thing, but wouldn't you say they got to start with just being vulnerable to let them know, like, okay, I I gotta be vulnerable with myself. I gotta do that inventory, like you said. So, what will be some pointers, some starters, in addition to the check inventory? What will be next after that?
I think that the supervisors or the managers in the workplaces have to start with the conversation, because there has to be the rapport, there has to be the trust, there has to be connection. And once the people who work in that workplace feel comfortable and feel safe, then they can open up and be more vulnerable. But you have to make that workspace conducive to vulnerability. So they can't come in feeling as if it's not safe. I like the buddy practice. Like if you went on a field trip and you had to hold hands with your buddy, pick a buddy. This is your buddy. I like the buddy method, where there's that buddy at work, where you are intentionally building that relationship. And so these relationships are being fostered when you come into the workplace. I love the concept of a mental health Monday. So if you come to work on a Monday, there's time built into the schedule where we all meet for a huddle or morning huddle, and you are intentional about working with that buddy. There's work being done to build that relationship. And then if you can't talk to anyone else, you can talk to that buddy. And there's accountability at that level. And that buddy checks on you throughout the week. If you cannot say anything to your supervisor, I can talk to the buddy, and maybe the buddy needs to be the person who can articulate some things. And of course, there may be some issues that may be too extreme for a buddy to handle. And so then there has to be another process in place for that. But at least if there's that one person, for that person who's not comfortable. Some people have never, a lot of people struggle with emotional maturity. And so if you've never really had to process through your emotions, no one has ever taught you how to process, you don't really know how to handle them or have those conversations. That's not going to be easy. But if I can get that one person, we spend a lot of time with the people we work with. If I can get that one person in my workplace who I can develop that relationship, I can trust them. And I can say, Mental Health Monday, 15 minutes before we go to our desk, before we plug into our phones, before we put our headphones on and start interacting with the public or doing whatever our job requires us to do, let's do this mental health check-in. And like really being able to be honest and transparent about when you say, how are you today? Like don't do the cliche stuff. Don't do the cliche. Oh, I'm good. If you're not good, knowing I can tell my buddy I am not good. And then there again are things already in place, like, my buddy has said she's not doing well today. So these are the steps we take. A, she needs 10 minutes. B, she needs to go for a walk, outside and get some fresh air. C, she needs to call a loved one and just hear their voice. We have become perceived as an overly sensitive culture with this awareness of mental health. But I think it's just because it's been ignored for so long. It hasn't been a priority. It hasn't been a value. There haven't been conversations around it when there should have been conversations around it.
Correct.
And so now it is a fine line sometimes when you go, there's certain things that maybe when I worked in the classroom 15 years ago, we could joke about and people not be offended. But now you can't say those same things. And a lot of times people, their feelings are valid. And so you can't joke about it because they're coming up in a culture where they're saying, if something has hurt you, you have the right to respond to that. And you have the right to say, I don't like when you say that to me.
I mean, and that's boundaries, emotional self-care, and building emotional intelligence as well.
Absolutely.
So, a caregiver, someone that I felt like, on my caregiver journey, there were some plenty lonely moments. What would you say to the caregiver that may be struggling with their making mental health a priority? We know about developing a routine. We know about prioritizing. that caregiver in their in their lonely moments, the late night, the loved ones is asleep, when it's just them, what would you say that they should do with that time to give to focus on their mental health?
I would say tap into that one thing that makes you excited. If it's poetry, if it's reading, if it's writing, if it's binge watching Love and Hip Hop, whatever it is. And sometimes you may need the additional push or courage to do that. When we get to that place, then there may be some other steps we need to take. Because if we can't be motivated to take those, it's one if you just feel exhausted, but if you can't even be motivated, then there may be some other actions that need to be taken, because you may already be entering caregiver burnout, caregiver fatigue. It's been called caregiver syndrome now. But if you're still at the place where you can take the time and just recognizing that I just need these moments to myself. And even if I'm feeling lonely, this is the one thing that I can do to make me feel good, to bring me happiness, to make me feel like I'm not an island, to make me feel like I'm not isolated, whatever that one thing is. And it means you have to be able to know yourself. That's self-awareness.
There you go.
So that's a huge part about knowing the things that work for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's, caregivers. So what can you tell people who may know caregivers? Like, you might know someone who's a caregiver. They're the primary caregiver. They're always with mom. They're always with dad. What advice or tips can you give to those people regarding the caregivers? Like, check on what tips can you give the outsiders, the others who are not the caregivers, but could be the friends of the caregivers or somebody close by? What tips can you give them regarding mental health, regarding to the caregiver, that type of thing? Like, check on them. Like, what can they do to make sure they're in a good mental space, the caregiver's in a good mental space? What tips can you provide regarding that?
Yeah, I think they can use the same approach as a Mental Health Monday, but it can be any day of the week.
Okay.
Being intentional. Huge part of mental health. Being intentional and taking the time and saying, I'm going to devote Tuesday at 12 noon to give my friend who's a caregiver a call. But also having the capacity to receive the response. Because you could be calling them on a day when they are extremely overwhelmed.
Correct.
Do you have the capacity? So ensuring that you have the space to have because sometimes people who are caregivers just need to talk.
That's right.
You're just frustrated. You, like you say, you feel lonely. You feel like this is all I do with my life is take care of someone else. Who takes care of me? When do I get a break?
Come on.
But you care so much about your loved one that you understand that I have to do this, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right.
But I'm still struggling.
Correct. That's real.
That's real. And so I have to be here today until 8 p.m. But can I just talk to somebody?
There you go.
And sometimes the caregiver may not reach out first because they don't want to burden others.
That's true.
So saying to them, you're not a burden. So this is the time that I have devoted to you. So let's talk. Tell me what's on your heart. Tell me how you feel. And just listening. And then even asking, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to offer advice? Do you want me to come sit with you?
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. Just come and sit. You don't even have to help me do anything.
Correct.
But just someone else who's here with me. I feel the support.
Yes.
I feel the genuine support, and I can appreciate that. And now I don't feel so lonely. I don't feel so alone. You can give them 15 minutes. So taking the time to do an intentional check-in.
Okay.
Being a listening ear. Offering to help. I know a lot of times caregivers are not going to say, would you? Yes, please. You can do this. Yes. Right. But just constantly reassuring them.
Yes.
And don't offer the help if you cannot really
there you
help.
Go.
That's huge. Go. So can I bring you anything? Yes. Would you grab me a chicken dinner from KFC or somewhere else? And then you say, oh, well, I can't do it today. So ensuring again that you have the capacity to offer your support in various ways.
You mentioned churches. What can other organizations in the community do to foster mental health, to make it more so a part of the culture? Like for me here, We Support Caregivers. I, as the executive director, I do a wellness check-in with my team once a month. I call each member. I said, and they don't always know I'm gonna call. And because I want to catch them in that rawness, whatever that day was. Right. And I call and I do a mental check, not mental, but overall wellness check-in. How you feeling physically today?
Right.
What's your week been like? That type of stuff. And I appreciate they are very transparent with me, but I also provide a safe space.
Right.
Because nothing anybody shares go anywhere. Right. If anything, I pray for them. Absolutely. That's what I do. Right. I pray for them. Right. So I feel like as being in a role as executive director, the culture here, a part of our culture, right. we can't preach self-care if it's not fostered within the organization.
Right.
So I'm so intentional about that. And my team feels like they can come to me. I pry in their business. I mean, and even when the storms and stuff, I text, hey, everybody all right? Nobody's in the storm yet. I do all that. Right, yeah. And I mean it from my heart because even though they are part of the organization, I want to also know I'm pouring into you as well. So here, it's that wellness check-in, that self-care check-in. I do that once a month with my team. And I also provide, it's an open door, open communication. You can call me, you can text me. I'm very clear on when I'm available and stuff like that. And if I can't answer the call, just text me, hey, Sheena, I'll go to another room or step off the floor, whatever I need to do to adhere, to attend. But that's something here that we foster within. Absolutely. Is that self-care.
Absolutely.
So what can other organizations, churches, things of that nature do to really make mental health more comfortable to be talked about and discussed?
So let's start with churches in terms of other organizations. Okay. Because we know, or places of worship.
Okay.
We know that that's a vital component to most of our communities. It has to start with the conversation.
Yes.
It has to start with bringing people, the leadership, the members around the table and having the conversation surrounding mental health and then taking the team approach to say, what do you think we can do? It has to be mentioned in sermons. Yeah. We have to make it a priority.
Yes.
Same thing with the workplace.
Yes.
We have to have a conversation. We have to have the meetings. We have to bring awareness. We have to have the workshops.
Yes.
So I love to talk about the role of places of worship, because a lot of us spend so much of our time there.
That's true.
And so if you really want, we want salvation for our members, but while we're here on earth, we want them to live well also.
Right.
And part of ensuring that they're living well and they're maximizing the potential to live well, we have to talk about mental health. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be in a sermon. Jesus rested.
That's right.
Jesus wept.
Come on.
So we know that he felt some stress.
That's right.
So we can take the biblical, approach to talk about why it's necessary and why it's important. So I would say having the conversations, building the awareness, taking the time to ensure that those things are occurring. It doesn't matter what field you're in.
Right.
If you are interacting with others, if you are an entrepreneur and barely see others, it is important. And so the conversations, understanding what needs to happen, even for yourself.
Right.
And then sharing what you learn about yourself with others. Having those conversations at home. And your home is kind of an organization.
That's right.
So being responsible for ensuring that there is some type of routine that your family follows. How do we know if someone is not well in the home?
Right.
How do we know you're struggling with mental health? How can we handle that? What can we do to support you? And even coming up with the mental health plan for the organizations. I think every organization should have a mental health plan. So if someone comes to church Sunday and stays after and meets with nurses unit, what is the plan that we have? A general plan, and then maybe we can develop one. I think that there should be a team of people in whatever organization. Right. If your organization is too small to have a team, they're interns. You might be able to pull from, partner with another organization.
There you go.
And say, what can we do together to ensure the people who support our organization, who volunteer with us,
that's right,
are doing well.
Right.
Because you can't, the cliche phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right.
But you really can't. And so you really can't. The goal is not to just pour from a cup that's full, but to serve out of the abundance.
That's right.
Yeah, to serve out of the abundance. And you can't do that if your mental health has not been taken care of.
I like how you put it everything starts with the leadership. Like I put it back on myself. Here we support caregivers. We preach the mission, to caregivers about self-care, but it's something that we foster within. And me being, the leader here is something that is implemented even, to the team. So again, that's going to have to start with the pastors in the church, things like that. That's like, hey, y'all, we got Jesus, but there's nothing wrong with having Jesus in a therapist.
Right.
I mean, it's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's that, and that's being vulnerable and transparent. So they got to do their own inventory.
Absolutely.
I feel like when you're in a leadership like that and you're in that position, you have to walk in transparency. You can't act like you got it together. None of us got it together.
Right. Right.
So I like how you said it definitely have to start with leadership, because whatever the leadership wants, that's what's going to be implemented within the whole organization.
So true.
So I like how you said that. So yes, partnering. I like how you said partnering. Hey, don't reinvent the wheel. Let's partner with somebody that can bring it in, because some churches don't have, and especially since COVID, a lot of churches are struggling with just getting still people back in the pews.
Right.
So it may be a very small team that's already wearing, each person wearing 10 hats doing stuff. Let's just keep it real.
That's a fact.
Okay?
That's a fact.
So no, we're not going to put that on us. We're going to partner with another organization that's their whole mission is mental health, and we'll bring them in and let them do a workshop, a monthly workshop, stuff like that. Yeah. So I like how you did that. So I know we want to go over again before we end this, the different areas, of mental health or, self-care. So I'm going to let you go ahead and go into that, again.
So let's start with, or let's just use as a frame of reference, the six primary areas. Okay. So let's make sure we are taking care of ourselves emotionally,
yes,
physically, socially, intellectually, spiritually, and occupationally. Mm-hmm. So there are up to 9 or 10 areas that we can focus on. Sometimes we talk about culturally, but let's talk about those primary areas right there, those 6 areas, and ensure that we're doing as much as we can to foster our well-being in each of those areas individually, because together they help foster our mental health and make us feel better overall.
Right. Because, I was telling someone that if you self-care in total, self-care, you can't just focus on the physical and neglect everything else. You're still not working your way towards wellness.
Right.
And wellness is not like a complete destination. Wellness is continuing.
Absolutely.
So self-care is the steps to wellness.
Right.
But even when you think you're well, you're not going to, it's a continuous motion. You understand what I'm talking about?
Right.
It's not a complete destination. Oh, I'm there.
Right.
While you're at the wellness, you still got to keep doing the self-care to maintain the wellness.
Absolutely.
You understand what I mean? So I tell people, well, if you're only focusing on 1, 2, 3, you're still not well.
Right.
It's all the steps.
That is true.
To equal or to make it to wellness. And even when you're to a place of wellness, and you have to maintain the wellness. Well, how you maintain the wellness, Sheena? All them other steps that you took. Right. You understand what I mean? Yeah. So that's important.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you. Any last comments? Any, last remarks you would like to say before we end things,
So sure. But thank you for giving me this opportunity. Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. But
thank you. Likewise.
This has been exciting. You are great at what you do.
Oh, thank you.
I love how a lot of what you said about what you do with your team.
Yes.
And how, as a leader,
yes,
you are setting the example, which is what leaders should absolutely do. And ensuring that your team is being checked in on, and that you're the one facilitating, that. So thank you for being a dynamic leader. Thank you for what you all do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And to every caregiver out there, you are so immensely appreciated.
Yes.
And if you ever feel like you are overwhelmed, please don't be afraid to take a few minutes to just reach out to someone who you trust and who you love. Because there are people who really desire to support you. And sometimes maybe they're not even comfortable saying, what can I do? But be okay with saying, I need help. and seeking out that person who you know you can trust and you feel comfortable in that space to receive that support from.
Yes. Well said.
Yes,
well,
ma'am.
thank you, Nakia.
Thank you
we
for
appreciate you. And it won't be the last time, okay?
Absolutely not.
All right. Thank
Thank you.
What does self-care look like to you? Does it look like meditation or journaling? Does it look like putting on your comfiest outfit or having a dance break? Does it maybe even look like listening to a podcast, going for a walk, spending time with family and friends? Self-care can look different for each person, but we would like to share some starting points with you. You can go to our website at www.wesupportcaregivers.org and sign up for our self-care support kit. We choose a deserving caregiver each month to send these intentional items to support your self-care development. We support caregivers because caregivers deserve self-care.
Entrepreneurs, content creation should never be your concern. Socially Established LLC is a social media management business whose mission is to alleviate entrepreneurs and small business owners from managing their social media. Socially Established LLC offers content creation and social media management packages for your convenience. Remember, you were never meant to manage everything on your own. Visit sociallyestablished.com to choose your service package today. Socially Established LLC, establishing what entrepreneurs need.
We all know that social media is full of information, but you have to keep scrolling to find what pertains to you. Well, caregivers, did you know that you can have your information about what we offer to caregivers delivered straight to your email? We Support Caregivers has created a newsletter just for you titled The Care Connection. It's delivered to your inbox once a month. Caregivers, stay connected and stay in the know by going to our website at www.wesupportcaregivers.org and sign up today. Let us support you on your caregiving journey. We support caregivers because caregivers deserve self-care.